Shall we begin our meeting? Let's call the meeting to order. Right now, the Athens City Historic and Architecture Preservation Commission. So we are called to order. Everyone received the minutes from the last meeting, I believe. Are there any additions or corrections for those?
I move that we approve them.
Someone second it?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion, any changes or corrections? If not, then that will stand. So they are accepted into our minutes. Okay, our next meeting will be March 8th at 5:30 p.m. So is everyone okay with that date, I hope?
Yep.
Okay, good. I don't know if we have any guests with us tonight that you might want to introduce or not.
Okay, Mark is on now. Is Dominic on? Oh, Dominic, you're on, but you're under my name, it looks like.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Paul. I used your link. So
Quite all right. I was trying to figure out where you were, and I realized I didn't have your cell phone number to text you. Let's see. Let me, and Lauren is trying to join as well, Mary Ann. Lauren was going to take the minutes this afternoon. Okay. 1 second here. So Mary Ann, excuse me, on the agenda, we had two pieces of old business, the first of which is the Priestley Award. And then the second is discussion with Ohio University about the ridges. I can put a link to the agenda in the chat if you'd like.
Okay.
But if you'd like, we could, for sake of expediency, we could have the ridges be the first item on the agenda if you'd prefer, just since Dominic's here. And
that'd be fine. So, so the first agenda item is talking about the Ohio University, the old state hospital, which we call the Ridges these days. So I think Dominic has something to report to us, I hope.
Well, I do, and thank you all for inviting me here. And really, I just wanted to provide an update and then open for questions, suggestions, and ideas. So just by way of background, I am with Ohio University, the Director of Real Estate. So the Ridges, as you know, as you said, was the old state hospital up on the hill. You know, the university has had ownership of it 30 plus years with, you know, substantial investment. I think we're above $30 million in investments in several of the buildings. But one half of the main Kirkbride building, and that is kind of centered with Lynn Hall and Kennedy Museum. We have rehabilitated one half, and that has been completed in 2020, just as COVID hit. But we still have the second half, which we call buildings 2, 3, and 4, which as you face the Kennedy Museum is to your right. Those are completely vacant and deteriorating. So I want to kind of give you a very brief update on the short-term needs and then kind of the long-term strategy, what we're doing with the Ridges. So from a short-term perspective, we have a dire need to stabilize the buildings. You know, they are very solid buildings, very well built, you know, from the 1870s. The biggest issue we have is water infiltration through the roof. About 5-6 years ago, we put on a temporary measure, tarpaulins, essentially to stop water penetration. Those were a temporary fix. They weren't intended as a permanent fix. And, you know, due to wind and UV rays, those tarpaulins have started to deteriorate and we have holes in the roof again. This is causing water infiltration. Water, one of the architects put it bluntly, water is evil for buildings. And so, it is a concern. The university's financial position is not strong at the moment. The university is looking to focus its investments on academic and research rather than on buildings that it is not using, but it recognizes there is a need, an immediate need for at least closing the holes in the roof, and then a longer term need to rehabilitate and reuse the building. So in the short term, the university has got estimates at 3 different levels. The first is essentially a basic replacement of the existing tarpaulins, and you're going to be amazed by these costs. $650,000 for a temporary tarpaulin patch. These are not just regular tarpaulins. This is, each floor in that building is 30,000 square feet. So you're talking, 30,000+ square feet of roof. So it is a large amount of tarpaulin. Plus, in places, the roof trusses have given way, so those would have to be strengthened. The cheapest potential option is around $650,000. A more robust solution using plywood rather than tarps, again, it's still temporary, it's not a new roof, would come in at $1.1 million. And then a long-term roof repair would be around $4.5 million. And that kind of gives you an idea of the cost of these projects. At the moment, the university has said they are willing to put up 1/3 of the $1.1 million, so around $350,000. But they are looking for community support to help in that cost. So that is the short-term need, the short-term position we're in. I can go on to kind of our long-term strategy, but I think it might be best to open up for discussion around kind of the short term and get some ideas around that before we turn to the longer term solutions.
Thank you for that report.
Sorry it wasn't more positive.
I understand. Does anyone have any suggestions or anything to add to this?
I can. Oh, go ahead.
No, Pam, I was going to call on you or John or one of our architectural types to get their reaction, what they thought.
Oh, well, architecturally, I have a lot of faith in those buildings because they're masonry. What's happening to them is not good, for sure. It's not good, and the repair of what's happening just compounds the cost. I mean, if we could save the roof sheathing and the roof trusses, that's going to be a lot better than having to replace them. So there's a financial incentive to act now when we talk about the architecture part. But I really do have faith underneath that of just the building standing, even though the roof does deteriorate, because it is a masonry building, and it'll be a while before it completely dissolves. So we do have a window, as bad as it is. I don't want to downplay how bad it is, but there is a window before it's irretrievable. There'll come a point where it is irretrievable, but we have some time. So that's my architectural opinion. But I want to also thank the effort. I think what I want to say is thank you to you, Dominic, and to Paul, and to other folks that have really been trying hard to find funding sources to make repairs there. You haven't been sitting idly, as far as I can tell. I don't have much to add. I'm an architect. I'm really don't know where to turn for outside funding. But I do want to thank your efforts, and I have my fingers crossed is about what my position is. So I'll add that to the mix. I'll stress again that it is the most important part of the Ridges, that building. That is really what our university and our town should steward. That is the history vis-a-vis anything else at the Ridges, anything else. And I'm going to harken back to something I said at a Ridges meeting not too long ago, where, I'm sorry the road's falling apart. And I'm sorry that there are other places in the Ridges that are turning into shambles. You got to let them go if you can take that money and put it into what we really are obligated as people in our community to preserve. And that's the main building. And that is buildings 2, 3, and 4. That is those wings. So I'll lobby for that emotionally, but I don't have anything to offer in terms of the finances of it. I don't doubt your numbers. I believe those numbers. I'm sure they're within the threshold, within the range of what it'll cost to do just those things you said, Dominic. And I'm pleased to hear that the university actually has upped the amount that they're willing to put into it a little bit from the last time I was in conversation with Deb. So that's it. Anybody got, and Paul, you've been working, you reached out to me, but Paul, I know you had been working, looking for funding sources. Any luck, or where does it stand? Or is there anything we can do as a committee to augment your efforts?
So Pam, first, thank you. You've given the most optimistic view, and I appreciate that coming from an architect. It sounds as though, yes, it is not imminent, but I think we need to treat it as imminent, because if we wait another 20 years, I think the building is not going to be there. So I kind of I treat this as urgent. Hopefully we've got a year or two, but to me there is a sense of urgency. I would Paul, Sean Boland with the university, and then Chris Knisley with the city council have been, and Joe Shields. It's been a great team. We have basically scratched everything we can at the federal level, private foundation level, state level, local level, bond levies. We have been through it all. From a grant perspective, there's small grants for $5,000. They're generally for planning. They're not for, the rehabilitation. There are big tax credits, historic rehabilitation tax credits at the federal and state level, new markets tax credits. There's a new mixed use tax credit. There's a lot of tax credits out there, which we can work with a private developer on. And that is kind of, we can talk about the long-term strategy in a minute. And all of those will come into play, when we find a private developer. The issue is finding a developer when the roof and the building is in the condition it's in is, it makes it a little harder, but that's half of the fun is kind of that challenge. Mark, I see you popped up on screen. Did you have something?
Yeah, well, yeah. The only thought I had, Dominic, is if you could talk about what you see as the long-term uses of those buildings. My question is, to attract private development money, is there a possibility that some private entity would want to take a long-term lease, 20, 25-year lease,
40.
and therefore would be willing to fund the cost of the rehab of the roof because they'll have it long enough? What's the long-term use of those buildings?
And that is what I've been working on. I've been with the university now for 2 years. I've met with over 20 developers. And that is the strategy is we would be looking, as a state entity, we can lease for 40, do a ground lease for 40 plus 40, so potentially 80 years, which would allow anything to be financed. The feedback I've had from developers is, essentially this is 100,000 square feet, 3 floors of 30,000 square feet. and the magnitude of the project is too risky for one developer, which then brings us to potentially multiple developers, multiple uses, which would be attractive, but that would then we would have to set up some sort of condominium structure, divide the building up. And at that stage, we could front finance the condominium structure to rehabilitate the exterior and then kind of put those as condominium charges once we get the tenants. But I think from the university's perspective, again, that's a financial risk. We don't see ourselves as a real estate developer. We would prefer to find a private developer that is willing to essentially serve as a master developer, bring in a senior housing developer, the alumni, an idea of alumni level would be fantastic. Alumni have suggested they'd love to be there. The problem is, until we actually, have a developer, it's all talk. So we are actively seeking a developer. That is our long-term strategy, and it would be a ground lease, potentially condominiumizing it, but ideally we would find one master developer that could take the whole 100,000 square feet.
But I think the key part to what you said, Dominic, is the university has no intention of using those buildings for classrooms, research, or educational purposes. You're very open to an outside developer for private use for up to 40 years. So if there is private money, you're very open to private development.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we truly see this as we want to get a private partner in there. The Ridges Advisory Committee has identified, workforce housing, senior housing as the ideal use. And the university is on board with that. We think, that would kind of bring life back to the Ridges. It would revitalize, what we call the Ridges Green. And it would allow further development with retail, with restaurants up there. It would truly build a campus up there with some vibrancy.
I worked for years with the folks up in Nelsonville on the old school facilities. And
Yep.
I was totally discouraged that they could ever be restored. I mean, like Pam and you've got time to go. And these buildings I thought were beyond reuse, at least one of them. And they were able to find a developer. I don't know if you know those people.
Yes,
They did it, and they turned it into housing, and it turned out very good. I worked with the folks up there, Dominic, for years trying to do what you're talking about right now. Just try to keep things from totally deteriorating, but water will destroy it faster than anything. And they didn't have no money, so we would try to move in, global or the gymnastics, and I'd have to put a bathroom in just so they could use it for some kind of public activity. But I was surprised that they were able to find a developer, and it's not just private money. This is goes back to housing for needy people or senior housing, where there are federal and state funds available to assist in the development of that building. And I don't know how that would dovetail with the high university, but I don't think that's a problem.
John, you're exactly right. And the group up there, the WODA group, we've had them down on site. They visited the site, so they were one of the development groups that came down. And you're exactly right. I mean, it's funny. Ohio University's state entity would ground lease it to a private entity, which would then leverage a whole load of federal, state tax dollars to essentially rehabilitate it. I mean, it is the ultimate public-private partnership. A public building leased to a private entity that's going to use public funds to rehabilitate. So, it's definitely possible. It's going to take time to find that developer, get that, it may take a year to get the financing structure in place. And then, another year to get plans, and then another year for construction. And that's why, this always takes longer, than people think, which is why, I think it may be worth looking at the temporary solution at the same time. We're going down parallel paths, both looking at the temporary solution. I'm still working with developers, but it's going to take a few years.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely. And a good portion of the Nelsonville schools, the roofs failed completely, and it caused an undue amount of expense that to be redone to rebuild, I mean, from ground up, the areas that were totally destroyed by water penetration into that facility. And nice not to have to go to that extent, because it's just going to cost a lot more money in the end if you can't stop it now.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Last month, we talked a little bit about, Paul, you and Rich Vedder talked about the capital budget bill and the money that's already been allocated to Athens County. And if the university has already committed up to, I think, Dominic, you said, 300,000, was that the number in that range? Is there any money in the capital budget bill that specifically would be matching money to protect structures that are in danger of falling apart for temporary uses? Rich, do you know anything, or Paul, that you could find matching money if we already have 300,000 that's willing to patch the roof?
Richest person I know in Athens is Dominic's wife, who controls. By the way, Dominic's a former student of mine, I will point out. And I'm delighted that he's doing this job. No, I'm joking there. The Foundation for Appalachian Ohio, of course. No, Mark, I don't. The money apparently has already been allocated for this year, and so we're talking about the next budget around. It does appear, it would seem logical to be talking to the political powers to be, the J. Edwardses of the world, and the senator this and the senator that of the world. And we probably ought to be sitting down with them, maybe with our lobbyists too, in Columbus, and say, hey, this is a big community need. Dominic, have groups like, in the senior housing business like Kendall, you've talked to all of them. Bob Glidden, our former president here, is the president of the Kendall operation in Lexington, Virginia, and he's just very ecstatic about it. And there's, of course, ones in Granville and another one up north, Oberlin area.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are many. And they went into the University of Cincinnati and put in a deal. I don't know much about it, but I'm told that there was a University of Cincinnati involvement. Have we exhausted all of those possibilities as well?
We've clearly not exhausted them. I mean, someone may have spoken to Kendall before I got here. I've not spoken with Kendall. I've spoken with groups like National Church Residences.
Yeah, that's
again, the WODA group does senior housing. So I've spoken with some of those. But, Rich, I don't want to ask a favor of you, but, I don't know if you'd be willing to put me in contact with Bob Glidden. It's always worth, it's an avenue I haven't spoken with. So I don't know if you'd be worth connecting.
I'll give you Bob Glidden's phone number.
Okay.
What I'll do, I'll email Bob Glidden.
Yeah.
Say, hey, there's this cool dude named Dominic Brook who's going to call you up and sometime soon. How would that be?
That would be perfect. Rich, I appreciate it. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, we've we've gone after both avenues. Kind of, I started with the developers, the large development companies, and essentially, some of the feedback was we need, the entity that's going to service our debt. That's not going to be the university using it. Essentially, you need to find the tenants. And Rich, you're exactly right. That's when I kind of started going after the actual, operators, the national church residences and so forth, because those are the entities we need to find. Once we find someone who will essentially say they'll lease it, finding a developer is not going to be that difficult.
Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And thank you for 18 years ago for all you taught me.
Thank you.
Paul, are you still there? I don't see you on the.
I'm here.
Okay, I was wondering, I was checking with Barb Powers about changing the designation of the Ridges, or the Athens State Hospital, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
The National Register nomination went in 1982, I believe, and it was for state, for state
Significance.
significance. And I talked to the lady who's in charge of National Register in Columbus, and I asked about changing this to national significance because I think it is. That would help with obtaining grants, I believe, because a lot of the grants are for national things. There are no state hospitals like that left in Ohio. And there are very few left in the country that are recognizable, the Kirkbride Plan hospitals. So the advice I got was to fill out a National Register questionnaire, send it to the Ohio Preservation Office, which I can do, and I will need to do my research about looking into every state and see what's still there, if plan hospitals left that are recognizable. I mean, there are many left, but they've been altered into things that we couldn't recognize at all, I'm afraid. So I can get to work on that. It may take a while, though. That's the problem, because if it has to go through the National Register process, that's time consuming and takes a long time.
Marianne, when I was working like on schools and things through the School Facility Commission at the Ohio, there was a whole category of emergency needs, and we could bypass an awful lot of the formalities and get fundings to do emergency repairs on schools. I don't know if there's anything that like that for historic significance or buildings. I mean, of course, we don't have any money, but unless it could somehow or other be qualified through the state for grants to have emergency assistance in terms of stabilizing a structure before it went too far. Because like Dominic says, and Pam, the thing of it is, you let it go a year, 5 years, 2 years, all of a sudden it's gone too far. And it becomes extremely difficult to justify salvaging.
I don't know if there is anything like that or not. I've not found anything.
In Ohio for emergency when buildings are in dire straits, essentially. And
John, we've looked at that and we've communicated that up to the State Historic Preservation Office to see if that money exists. We also had a call last week or a week and a half ago with Preservation Ohio, a nonprofit, and Heritage Ohio to better understand. We can't find anything out there. They're essentially what most people have said is our best bet is actually the state capital budget, which that we wouldn't be able to even submit for that from the state until 2022 to put into that budget. They'll pass that capital budget in December of 2022. There is money at the federal level. However, the federal dollars are only eligible to buildings and sites on the National Registry that are listed as being of national significance. And when this building, when this campus was registered on the National Registry, it was listed only as being of state of Ohio significance. And so that's one of the things we're hoping to do is get this changed to national significance so that we would be eligible for some of these federal emergency dollars, which I don't think, Dominic, I think we actually, there's no time to, I think the deadline was actually February 1st for this next round of the federal dollars. That being said, if we can get the paperwork done in the next several months, we would be eligible the next round, which probably wouldn't be for at least one until July 1st fiscal year, if not February of 2022. Mary Ann, to your question about some of that research, I think Shauna Bolin has been in communication, and Dominic, correct me if I'm incorrect, or correct me if I'm wrong, but Shauna Bolin has been in pretty close communication. There's a Kirkbride Preservation Organization, and she's been in communication with the president of that group or the chair of that board. They were actually going to do their annual or biannual conference of Kirkbrides in Athens last year, and they had, of course, had to cancel that because of the pandemic. So Shauna might be able to connect you with. She may already have that information, or that information is out there. The Kirkbride Group does have a website that identifies all of the ones that are in the U.S. and whether they're remaining or their current standing. I'll see if I can find a link to their website while we're talking, Mary Ann.
Great, thank you.
Is that Preservation Works?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I'm not sure. The funding, you mean, Cyrus?
sorry, the
Federal money. That sounds correct, but we've been looking at so many different grants and so many different things that I know we looked at Preservation Works. It's Department of the Interior money, is my recollection.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think what the telling me is that we'll have to treat this like doing another nomination. And for that, I mean, just gathering up all this background information, maybe photographing again, and things like that. So if anyone's a good photographer, let me know.
I don't think we should sell the possible next capital bill short either. That's an internal lobby, Dominic. If you go for basic renovation dollars and this becomes a line item, so be it. So it is December of 22. December of 22 is better than not December of 22. It's better than nothing. But it's an internal lobby at Ohio University. We can pressure it to the extent, of conversations with you or with Nellis or with Deb or with whomever. We can, help that lobby. But, everybody clamors for that capital money, and eventually someone decides where it's going to go and what the basic renovation list is going to be and whether or not. I mean, that's how we got money to do the roof on 13, 14, and 18. These lobbies start early. They start now. And that capital bill, those requests for December 22 are, maybe they're already done at Ohio University. You gotta be quick on the mark for this one.
And Pam, I think you've hit it there. And I've spoken with Eric Rashad at Lobbyist about, moving this up. The feedback I'm getting is, from the university's perspective, yes, they would, love to do this. However, they see this as, this would take away from any other funding. It wouldn't, it's a zero part,
Yeah.
We have life safety issues in buildings that students are in. So they're basically saying we can't do this. However, one of the thoughts is we kind of set up a community group that would lobby, even though it's a university building, if we set up some sort of ground lease structure, there's all different structures we can set up where, the city of Athens, the Port Authority, the Athens Economic Development Council can lobby for that money and basically say, look, we're going to own the exterior of the building. We will be the condominium association. And that way we can still go after, state appropriations for the building, but it's not the university. Does that make sense?
Well, I understand what you've said. I don't know if it makes sense, but yes, I understand what you said. Yep.
But Pam, you, as usual, have a pearls of wisdom there. And as does, of course, my former student, the illustrious Mr. Cook. I don't know that it would hurt us as a board, not only with this issue, but others, to meet periodically, maybe once every quarter, with people like our representative, Jay Edwards. How would it hurt us? I will pay for lunch personally. I will bribe him up to $25. I think you can do legally, which will pay for lunch and a drink even. And get 2 or 3 of us on the preservation board, and we go and we start the process moving. And it may be other projects have been suggested as well, but it seems to me this is a biggie. And this is one that the community could get behind, I think. And I understand Eric's point of view, because the university has a lot of dogs in the fight and so forth. I think we should do this, hopefully in cooperation with the university and in friendly relations with the university, but do it as a non-university entity to let the world know that there's more in Athens besides Ohio University, and that we should get going on this. If they're going to be giving money out in another year, we ought to be working on it now. I agree. Isn't that what you were saying, Pam?
It wasn't, and I'll tell you why it wasn't. What I was focusing on in my own mind was that this lobby that I referred to is an OU lobby. Dominic, I think, hit on it. You got to be a squeaky wheel within the university to get some of that capital money. And it's true, it's a finite amount of money. The needs at Ohio University are much greater than what the state gives us. But, and so to get a piece of that pie, you got to internally within Ohio University, you got to be the squeaky wheel. Then I'm just trying to bolster you to do that. However, having said that, Richard, your idea is brilliant, and we should get together, and there should be 3 people. We should move to have you set up an appointment to meet with our representative or whomever. I don't know who it is, whomever probably has the loudest voice or the most influence on capital distribution at the state level. And we should have lunch with them or whatever it is you want to do. So, I think we should make that an active motion to authorize you to do that. And I think it's a great idea to do it without Ohio University, and just do it as Athens, the city.
Hey,
So
Richard,
so I can move that.
Well, I don't know if we need to have a motion on whether to eat lunch.
I don't know if we do either, but
I mean, we can have an agreement in principle that we should move in that direction without, if you want to put it in a motion, I don't care, but.
What I want is that it happens.
Yeah,
and if putting it into a motion moves it along, then I'd put it in a motion. I mean, I'd write it down on a piece of paper and hold it up if that would advance it, or I'd send you a letter, or whatever little technique we need to make it happen instead of just being conversation. I think it would be a great idea. I would love it if you would take over the reins on that one. You're the perfect person to do it. It's brilliant.
Paul, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I think that's a good idea. We should. I guess yes, I do have a thought to your question. We should probably. I think there'd be benefits if we brought in Southeast Ohio History Center as part of any conversations like that we might have, Richard. So they're of course
that's probably a good idea.
The strong advocates for all of this, and Tom or Jessica are always can really talk this stuff.
Are there competing interests here? We have to be careful. I agree with you in principle, but someone will say, well, our first priority needs to be the church. Help me with it, the African American church. That we need to make that our first priority. Then someone said, no, the Ridges is really the biggest project. It almost defines Athens, and that we really need to go for it. So in other words, there might be differences of opinion. But I still like the idea that we at least start chatting.
I would, they are on some level. They are. There is competing interests out there, and I think that's okay. My opinion is that because there is a strong group of people working really hard around Mount Zion as well as around the ridges, is that it's a question of when are these problems solved, not will they be solved. I think there's so much momentum moving towards it, and as long as the university is committed to the ridges, this is going to be figured out. There's a lot of there's really smart people on this call right now, and there's a lot of really smart people that are working on this, and we keep talking to more people and explaining the situation to more people. At some point, we're going to figure this out. I'm trying to be the optimist. Pam's inspiring me to be the optimist, and I'm not.
I'm thinking that. I just want to say,
I'm not going to leave this call thinking that the ridges is going to be coming down, because it's not.
No, and good for you, Paul. Good thing to say. Very good. Gold star.
Thanks, Pam.
Something very quickly. I'm sure someone's looked into this, but there are any alumni contractors who would be willing to help out? I don't know if that's...
We have had some discussions with University Advancement, the foundation, more on kind of the fundraising side, not on the contractor side. That is something we've not explored, and that is, I love that idea. That is definitely something I need to follow up with, because rather than asking for money, asking for trades.
Yes.
That may be, a better way of looking at it. Yeah,
Well,
I will follow up.
If you're going to go down that road, David, my husband, was talking to me about programs that some of the local institutions around here have with training youth on construction. And I can't tell you who they are, but I'll get that information from him, where it could happen that they would take on the repair of that roof, the bad parts, or even if it's just one of the three buildings, 2, 3, or 4, as a project for their school. And I don't know whether that's Hocking College or whether it was Tri-County or whether it's some leftover remnant of the CCC. I don't know. I will ask David after this.
Okay, Pam. I tried to do that for years with Hocking College and Tri-County, and it doesn't work out very well.
Well, no, John, it is always kind of dicey.
We couldn't get them to do it because of the code requirements and the skilled labor requirements on public buildings, that we couldn't use students to do the work. I mean, for Hocking College, always trying for years and years to get the students involved in the construction projects. And invariably we ran into roadblocks with that, with the state of Ohio.
I'm not surprised that you ran into roadblocks, and there may very well be roadblocks in this endeavor as well. But I did projects with what was left of the CCC at Ohio University campus that were successful. And those guys, young men, built all of the stairs that are in Athens, and they go, it was through Ohio University, but it was in the city of Athens. This was, 20, 30, God knows, I don't even want to tell you how many years ago, but it happened. And you're right, John, it is a pickle to have to work with.
The kids get hurt, and the university becomes.
Right. That's the nay side. That's the nay side of looking into this. But maybe if we're desperate enough, we need to go ahead and try and overcome some of that and give it a try.
I'm more than willing, to push that. Pam, if you're willing to kind of connect me through your husband's contact, a couple of thoughts. As a university building, I don't believe we're subject to city code, which may help on that side.
That's correct.
The other part is, this isn't permanent building. This is essentially more of a temporary fix. So there may be a way. I mean, unless we investigate, it's a hard no. So I'm willing to take a look and see. It's worth exploring. But I think we have to be cautious that it may not go somewhere, but it's worth having a little poke around, see if there is any potential there.
Hey, Dominic, this is Mark. I want to.
City codes don't matter. It's state codes that would be
okay.
To the Ridges renovations.
Okay, good point, John. Thank you.
Dominic, I want to go back to the thought process and some things. You said 3 or 4, I think, real important things. A, that the university would have some money, 300,000 potentially as part of the funding. Second, that there's no intended use for its core mission of educational buildings or research, that it can be a private developer. But then you said the private developers want to know what might be the potential end use. And you mentioned senior housing, which comes up over and over and over and over in Athens County. But what other thoughts are there that's the potential use for the 100,000 square foot building other than senior housing? Because if you could identify who needs that much space, all of it or part of it, if it's condominiumized or whatever, then you work backwards to find the developer and find the money. What other potential uses have been identified that are acceptable for a 40-year lease?
So, I mean, the main two use, or the main use is that's been discussed is housing. Essentially, given the way the building is structured, and to Pam's point, these are very robust buildings. I mean, some of the walls are 2 foot thick, and so the biggest cost would be taking out some of those internal walls, is my understanding. And so I think we're focused on housing because that it will be able to fit within the existing internal footprint of the building. Now, the framework was done, I think, 2016, 2017, before I came to the university. So it may be worth revisiting, see if there are other ideas. But I think, the Ridges Advisory Committee, based on the kind of the framework plan, identified it really was around housing. Potentially, I've heard discussions around hotels, but I don't think, the 100,000 square foot hotel would be, quite a development. The bottom floor could be retail, restaurant, potentially offices, although I think the university has said they don't want to guarantee use of any space, which again brings us back to, the residential piece again. But Mark, did you have anything specific, in mind?
No, that's a lot of space. And I just wondered what uses would be possible and would be ideal other than senior housing, if there were other things under discussion that it could be used for. And then we try to find, okay, who are the folks in that business?
So when I talk with developers, I say, look, here's the framework. This is kind of what's been advised, but I leave it open. I mean, at the end of the day, the developer is going to be the entity taking the risk. They're the entity that's going to have to know the market opportunity. And so it's, while we would love to see senior housing, and that's been identified, essentially we need to listen to the developers to see what is economically feasible. So I think we have to have an open mind. I think, yes, it'd be great to get a use that has been identified, but, is it more important to have that use or to have the building rehabilitated and reused? To my perspective, we have, things we would like to see, but at the end of the day, we have to be open to all potential uses that fit within the character of the building, and on a university campus. But I think everything can be explored because at the moment we don't have anyone wanting to use it. So I think we have to be open-minded.
Any other comments on this topic? Has anybody got other thoughts they'd like to share?
Mary Ann?
Yes.
Pam was threatening to make a motion, which I'm glad she didn't. But would it be all right, and I'm looking at some of you, Mark, you've expressed an interest in this, if maybe I just organize a lunch with a few, maybe one or two politician types, certainly Edwards, since he's our state representative, maybe our state senator, whatever, and just invite anyone on the board to come. There's no legal problems, is there, Paul, with us meeting? It doesn't violate the open records law, does it? We're not voting on anything, or we're not going to have a formal meeting. Is there any problems with doing that?
As long as you're not, as long as there's not a quorum and you're not making any decisions that should be made in public, no.
Yeah.
One issue you're going to run into, of course, is I guess if you might want to seek people that have been vaccinated, Richard, to attend this luncheon. Because
Well, I'm thinking of a very small
I like
group.
you all, but I'm not so sure I'm prepared to sit down and have a meet.
Maybe a group of, maybe we do six, a group of six or something.
Yeah,
I say that as one who's been vaccinated, by the way. So,
which is wonderful. I'm happy to.
have you, Mary Ann?
I've gotten my first one. The second one is later this month.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah.
Good.
Mark, have you been vaccinated?
Got the first one.
Yeah. Maybe.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Maybe we can do this in a couple of weeks anyway.
I can let you know that the OUN has, they do have facilities. They use their ballroom to do socially distanced meetings, so they can facilitate a very socially distanced lunch at the OUN.
Thanks, Dominic. That's good to know.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
I want to thank everyone here. This has been a great discussion. I appreciate you. Please, I will follow up on those.
Questions was, who are the wealthiest people in your town? They're the ones you should talk to. I thought that was interesting, but so shall we move on with our meeting then? I think we also have the Grizzly Award information
Do you need me to stay on for this, or am I?
about the Ridges.
No.
So
Does Dominic need to stay on, Mary Ann?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you all. I really appreciate the
But thank you
feedback
for
and the
joining
great
us.
ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dominic.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
what? Okay, but thank you very much for joining us, Dominic. Like that a lot. And then we do have an award that the Presbyterian Church in town. And my fault. I said I would do a brief history. There that have already been written. I decided that that's probably not what we need. Just take very basic history and just add to it a description of the building or something. Everybody, because there's so many histories that go into great depth. And I don't think that's something that we need for this little award that we're giving. So what do other people think about that?
We think you are the best person in this whole group who can put together a synopsis, and that you are
Thank you.
eloquent and knowledgeable, and that I'm assuming we need this condensed version for things like maybe a press release or somebody's verbal little talk. And you're the Mary Ann. Nobody could do it better than you.
Oh,
And a
Pam,
page is
thank
plenty.
you.
A page is
Right,
more
it's
than
fine.
enough.
It's just a matter of, I don't think anyone has ever really described the building very well. We can do a basic history, like when it was formed and how old it is, and they had another church building there, which is long gone. But I'm running into some difficulties. I found a newspaper from April 1901. Now, the cornerstone was set in, the cornerstone was set for the Presbyterian Church. And in, I think it was July, just a few months later, I found a newspaper article about a wedding that had 350 people attending. I thought they couldn't have built that in 3 months. But
No, they couldn't have. But,
no way.
They may have delayed the laying of the cornerstone. That's possible that they laid the cornerstone. I mean, I don't know where it is, but Maybe
it was
it
like January 1st or January in 1901, according to the old history of the church that was done by church members. I don't need to worry about things like that either, but I get sidetracked looking at things like that. So
yeah.
I will try to finish this up. And I think, who is doing the plaque wording? Because I found the wording that we put together for St. Paul's, and I still have that. If anybody
Wasn't
Well, was it?
Yeah, was it the short version or the long version? Didn't we do a long version and then we shortened it later on?
Yes, we did. Yes. And I got that short version, which is very...
Yeah, and that guy wasn't Guy our man on that? Guy,
Well, he was going to.
he was going to have
He was going
plaque made.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was Guy.
Well, what was it? We could vote on it. I mean, you could rewrite that and stick in the Presbyterian Church. It might be perfect, and we could knock that one out pretty quick in a vote.
Easily, actually, I can rewrite that quickly. But
Yeah.
Promise I will finish this up. I mean, this is getting ridiculous, and it's all me doing this. I'm sorry, it's my fault completely. But I just don't think they need to.
Don't be hard on yourself. This is your field, and you do have a lot of knowledge, and you do appreciate and you understand the importance of details. So it would be hard for you to distill it, but still, you're the best person to do it. Sorry.
So, thank you. I will do it, and I will get it done.
Cyrus was the plaque guy. And he does all the plaques and stuff. I mean,
Did the armory one for sure.
I know. I think at the last meeting, Guy actually was just wondering who was doing the wordage on the plaque, not necessarily him,
Oh,
according to the minutes.
well,
I can help with that, Marianne. I don't think we'll need too much wording.
no.
Oh, that's right.
So, honestly, what's going to probably pin us in is once we get a quote on a plaque is how many inches of space we have and how many characters are going to allow us to have. But we should probably be prepared for 75 characters or less, I would think. Maybe not that small, but 100 characters, 200 characters.
How about something like the name of the church, the date that it was formed, and the present building was built, 1901. It's just something real simple like that. The first, I think it's the First Presbyterian Church of Athens is what it's actually called. So that's pretty long in itself. And the date of formation, the date that they replaced the small church with what is there now on the same lot, no less. I think something like that would work, and we could put it on the other corner. They have the National Register plaque already on the outside of the building, and there's another corner where we could put our plaque, maybe, if they would let us.
Well, your location is perfect. We've talked about that before. So the location and the size, replicating that same size, those are perfect decisions. I would think we would want to either mention our name or the Grizzly Award and the date that we have given the award as well.
Okay.
I don't think it's important to say that there was a building here before and they built a new one. We're talking about that building that exists right now. We're not talking about what was there before. So we're just acknowledging the care that this congregation has made to preserve that building, not what was there before. We don't care about. I think so. We are the Athens City Historic Preservation Board. We are awarding the First Presbyterian Church, built in blah, blah, blah or not, the Prisley Award for Historic Preservation. That's not well said. I did not say that well. And the date is 2021, whatever month you want to pick. Just something to that effect. Only don't say Historic Preservation Board twice.
This is what
Quit laughing, Mark. You're giggling there. I can see you. You can't get away from it.
It can become a stream of consciousness plaque, Pam. We all just keep talking until we run out of room.
and get it around to everybody.
Well, wait till you get to somebody who wants it to be a digital plaque and that you can go up to it and ask it questions and it'll tell you more. It'll have buttons. It won't even have buttons to push. No, I'm very archaic. I want it to be engraved and just match the other one.
No, thank you. That. So I'll finish that up and I'll send it around to everybody. All right.
Thank you.
Is there anything else to add to the preservation awards? No? And
Well, actually, now that we have,
business.
now that we've moved forward and have more of a plan, do we want to invite someone from the church to discuss what we might actually do for a ceremony or some kind of event for putting it on or presenting it rather?
I think the church wanted to do something, so I think we should work with them on it but we should let the minister know. So, but I think he wanted to plan.
Yeah, Cyrus, I think
We could invite-
we suggested we did want to have somebody from the church come to one of our meetings as we're planning it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's invite him next meeting.
Yeah, Rob Martin's the pastor. He would be the one to invite.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like we're at a point where we're ready for that, so I'd be in favor of
Anyway.
our next meeting.
Right, were we going
Who's going to invite him?
Yes. Invite Reverend Mark. That all right with you, Paul?
Yes, Marianne. That's fine.
Okay. Is there any other new business we should be discussing? I don't have any, so if nobody else does either, let's move on to announcements and updates. Anybody have?
I do. I have something, unfortunately. Here's our little brochure. In it are all the nice things that we said, and there's the map that we had, which was the proposed district map, nicely done graphically. Paul, did we? Oh, I want to say this correctly. You had a couple of your staff create an absolutely drop dead gorgeous, perfect, all 7 points covered map of the proposed district right before COVID hit. And you and I and your staff, we did the final edit of it. And I thought we had it 100% completed. But then when you guys went and got the city council to approve a slightly modified district, which was the old historic registered district instead of the proposed district. Do you still have staff that could redo that map and make it as nice as it was, but only show the district that we are as a board in charge of, so that I can include it in this brochure and that we all can have a copy of it?
I don't know that I have staff that can make it look as good as what was done then.
Oh,
But
okay.
that doesn't mean we can't make a map, Pam. I'll have to find what we did then. I assume I have a digital copy of that on this on my laptop, so I'll see what I've got. And then if I can coordinate with you, I mean, I have maps of that district that have already, we provided maps to city council and as part of the adoption process. So I have like 8.5 by 11 ready to print type maps of that stuff. I'll send you what I've got and we can go from there. I can put the map together. I just need some guidance from you as to what you want. At least I can put, like I said, I can put a map together.
That might be just perfect. I mean, there may be a few edits to put on it in terms of information, but no, that might be just perfect. I got to have something that's correct so that Mark Snyder and so that, I don't know, probably Richard Vader, you guys haven't even seen it. You don't even know what the district is in terms of a map, and it might be a handy tool.
I'll send you what I've got and we can go from there if that works, Pam.
That works for me. Are you kidding? You guys do all the work. All I do is sit here and talk.
So you mean our district is the old National Register district? No.
Yes.
Duh.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the district that was established in 81 or 82, whatever year that was, Mary Ann. That's the boundaries. Yeah, that's what the Preservation Board thought was the appropriate approach, was to get what the legwork had already been done. The heavy lifting had already been done by establishing that all the way back in the early 80s. And so that's what you all moved forward with an expectation that can be expanded into the future.
And we should do that. We should, it doesn't feel right today to do it, but we should keep thinking about how we want to expand that district to reflect the proposed district that we envisioned.
Yeah, definitely.
The reason we did this, COVID came, we weren't going to be able to have any more property owners come to our meetings. And we had no jurisdiction whatsoever at that time.
That's correct.
A year ago. Now we've got a district that we have jurisdiction, and we can modify that as we please, as long as we follow the protocol that Paul put forth in terms of notifying all the property owners and having public meetings and forums, which we were not capable of doing as much.
That's correct, John. That's correct.
Now, I mean, in the meantime, their buildings are being built and torn apart in Athens that we had no control over whatsoever. Now we have some control, at least over the national district in our downtown area.
John, that map you had was so wonderful. I thought that's what we were taking to City Council. I'm sorry.
We never went through all the...
Your map, your is great.
Well, that's what we're going to try to do now. I think that now we've got the basis and we can go to that. And whenever we can have public meetings, we can present this to people and the property owners, because according to, and Paul showed me and verified, we have to notify everybody in the proposed district.
Do we?
And that's a lot of property owners.
No, but do we have to? I mean, if it was a National Register district,
it's already been approved.
But the city is designating as our historic district. So do we have to notify everybody?
We'll have to double check the code, but there's either requirements for a public hearing, or I think if it's less than X number, Mary Ann, I believe you could do mail notification, but otherwise.
Okay.
But the long and short of it, I think, is regardless of what code says, my impression is that City Council expects us to be having those conversations with property owners so that a property owner is not caught flat-footed and surprised by this change. So that's their goal, of course, is to make sure that we're all working together.
No, I understand that, but I was thinking, that, just a good thing sometime if they want to come. Of course, with the COVID, it's hard to do that, but
right.
Get around that, actually. But so I guess we have to wait until we can have a public meeting.
We can do that type of work on Zoom, et cetera. It's just a question of whether we think that's appropriate, whether people, it's up to the board to decide what's the appropriate rate of moving forward with that. But that can be done. We can arrange public meetings online. We're doing one right now. City council's had public hearings online.
Hey, Paul, if I can jump in here, our indications are that we're going to be virtual probably till July 1.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have to leave.
I do too.
Yeah.
Are we about done with the meeting? If so, I would like to move that we adjourn. I will move that we adjourn.
Second.
John is stepping. Yeah.
Rich, I can't hear anything. Something's wrong with my.
Adjourn.